Today I'm doing another update on my project, this Acura TL Type S 2002. So far, I've put 1,600 miles on it, and it's pretty strong. It's going pretty strong. Uh, since the last update, I wasn't really detailed on what was going on with this car. But when I first got this car, it had a check engine light, and the check engine light was for, just little codes. I was lucky enough, it was just the engine coolant temp sensor. So basically, it wasn't reading the temperature of when the engine was operating. So, and then also, so that was out, and that was pulling that code, and then there was another code for the thermostat. So I was lucky. I mean, I drove the car like that for like a week, and all I did was just monitor the coolant level in the storage tank, and kept make sure the level was good, and until I was able to repair it. And what I did to repair it is I changed out the coolant temperature sensor, and I replaced the radiator, not the radiator, the thermostat. Um, Another problem I was having with this car was, I don't know, maybe this wasn't the fault of the previous owner. Maybe it was the place he took it to, but um, there was no air filter in the airbox. So I found that out when I was addressing all these issues I was having while I was driving, which was it wouldn't shift from first to second. It was having some trouble. It was throwing codes constantly, throwing misfires. It was just starting to run poorly about maybe like 500 miles in. And I decided to, now is the time to do a tune-up, so, the engine bay was pretty dirty. I ended up taking out the valve covers. I ended up taking out the intake manifold. I took out the the spark plugs, and the thing about the spark plugs too, were the wrong spark plugs were installed on this car. They were like some kind of Bosch spark plugs, and really, so I got rid of those. I got some new valve cover gaskets. I cleaned up the valve cover. As a matter of fact, let me show you. Also, I ended up getting some new LED lights for the doors, and I got this light working. Keeping this car clean. Let's see. Oh, yes, that's right. Got a little ladybug decided to land on my hood. I got some new hood struts from the last video. I had to use like a little bar to keep the hood up, but it was important to get some new hood struts. So basically, I tuned up the engine. I checked the timing belt, and with 300,000 miles, I'm eventually going to get the timing belt. Like, I'm eventually going to replace the timing belt, and I'm also going to replace these timing belt covers with some kind of transparent timing belt cover, so I can see these, because I think that would look cool. Okay, so I replaced the the air filter. Like, I went and got a new air filter, but instead of getting a regular one, I just got a K&N one, so in hopes to help the engine breathe better. And I cleaned everything up here. These valve covers were so dirty. Now you could touch them, and there's no dirt on them. I cleaned up the valve covers, and I ended up getting some NGK spark plugs, the right ones that weren't needed to be installed on this car. So installed the right spark plugs, torqued it to specification. I cleaned the EGR plate. It was so gunky, filled up with oil and sludge, and I cleared up all the passages and cleaned that entirely. And I also cleaned the intake manifold cover, or cover the intake and the intake manifold as well. And I got so there's no oil here, you know, everything's real clean. I even cleaned up the transmission, which, by the way, for the transmission, I replaced the transmission filter because I was figuring I was running into some shifting issues, you know. So I wanted to make this car, you know, as efficient as possible. And to be honest, I think the transmission was replaced already, you know, because when I took this starter off, there was a brand new torque converter in there. It was nice and clean, brand new. So something leads me to believe that somewhere along the time this transmission was replaced. So I mean, I might be lucky. I might just, you know, not need to replace the transmission. I mean, there's no real problem with it. I ended up replacing the top solenoid, one of the shift solenoids, and due to it was slipping in first gear. So I decided to change the first solenoid. I kept the second one, the brown one. I had changed that at a point, but the new one I had changed caused like shifting. It's a hiccup when it shifts the second, and I wasn't really having problems with this bottom shift solenoid, so I just put the old one back in. So, and on top of that, the new one was leaking, making it leak transmission fluid too. So I just ended up putting the old one back in, and it stopped leaking from there. And I also replaced this ground wire because the old one was pretty loose, so I wanted the battery to have a solid connection. The next thing I'm gonna have to do with this is I'm gonna have to replace this radiator, because this radiator, I think it was replaced at a point in time, but it's leaking in this corner over here. It's seeping coolant. So I mean, there's still a slight coolant leak, but it's not as bad as, you know, it's not gonna make this car like blow. I just gotta keep filling the storage, coolant storage, which doesn't go down as much. It's a small seepage. I'm gonna have to replace this radiator at some point in time. Today though, I'm gonna be doing the brakes. So these brakes are pretty bad. They're really worn, they're burnt out, and you know, every time I brake, I get that brake pedal vibration, you know, because the front rotors are warped. So I have to I've gotten some new brake rotors and some pads, and I'm gonna be replacing those today. But I didn't just get the regular OEM brakes and rotors. No, I got some high performance brake pads and brake rotors, you know, slotted and drilled. So that's gonna basically be like the second upgrade to this car, besides the K&N filter. Also, I replaced the window regulators for the rear windows, because so I could use them again, even though I don't. But yeah, you can see right here that this rear rotor is already being scratched off because there's no material on these pads. I had to wait for a while to get these pads or rotors. But yeah, I'm gonna show you what they look like afterwards, and then there's like a specific break-in that I have to do too. I have to like, it's these are very special brakes. So yeah, the reason I like, this is gonna be an OEM plus car, so everything that I replace on this car has to be better than the stock. That's my idea. So yeah, the brakes, you know, they had to be replaced, so those were the next to go. but I couldn't do I couldn't even do the stock brakes anyway because they are too weak for this car. They might have not been for the regular TL, but for this car in general, they're too they're too weak. And what happens is if you slam on the brakes, then you know this car in general has an issue with warped rotors. So a way to combat that is to have the rotor cool a lot quicker. So that's the whole reason for slotted and drilled rotors. So yeah, I will be showing you the results, and also I got my tools too. So I'm gonna show you like a little clip on the front rotors and the brakes, how I take them off, what I used to take them off. I ended up getting my tools from my toolbox, so I got them in the back. And yep, so I will be back when I get there. All right, so I got my setup here. These are the pads. These are the pads I ended up getting. They're like some carbon carbon ceramic pads. So these will probably, I'm just testing these out, to be honest. Anything's gonna be better than what's on there already. As you can see, that doesn't look any good. So I got the fronts and the rears, and then I also got these. That's my bottle, water. Always gotta keep water on you. I got some PB Blaster. So, just because there's like these screws on these rotors that you have to take off, so I don't want them to be like completely rusted out on me and be impossible to take off. I'd have to end up drilling them out, which I'm trying to avoid right now. But these are the new rotors that I got, and oh, they look so nice. But yes, front and rear, I got brand new rotors and some brand new pads. Got my jack stand set up, and now I'm about to start tearing into this thing. All right. What I'll be using actually within my handy dandy tool bag, what I'll be using is hammer. I got a hammer. I got some drill bits just in case one of those they're like a Phillips bolts that attach to the hub, the rotor to the hub, and if the Phillips end of it shears off, then I have to drill the whole thing out. So I brought a drill, and well, not drill the whole hole, but drill the head of that bolt out. But I brought my drill bits and my drill for that. And then I got a ratchet. I got some sockets down here. These are for my impact, my little impact here, little Milwaukee impact, and that's so I can use that to get the bolts out. I got a hammer just in case the rotors are stuck onto the hub, which I doubt they'll be, but you never know. And then I got this thing. It's called a caliper squeezer. So basically, I push on this handle and it separates, or rather pushes the piston back, into the caliper so that I could put the new brake pads on. This is a really handy tool, and for the shop, this is really quick to have. Also, you can avoid breaking calipers using this. But of course, if this is not really recommended, but in shops, but to each his own. It's all about how you do it and not how hard you do it. But I got these breaker bars here, and they're I'm just gonna separate the caliper a bit so I could get the old pads out, um, so that they won't be real hard to get out. So I got that, and then I got a two different ratchet sizes. One, this one I use to get the caliper bracket off, because the bolts are bigger in the back. And this one I use to get the caliper off the caliper bracket, because you don't want to use too much force. So I got a smaller ratchet, and I got some 3/8 sockets, and these are 1/4 inch sockets, but I'm not going to need those. Just a 3/8 and 1/2 inch sockets. And I got my impact gun so that I could get my wheels off here. And so I'll be right back. And when I finish jacking up the car, I will show you with the tires off how the brakes and rotors look right now in the front and the rear. And uh, basically I'll give you some tips on how to make it easy to take these rotors off if you happen to get stuck. Okay, I got my setup now, and right now, so this is the rotor. You can see here all the burn marks here, from where this rotor's just really worn. It's really old, and it's warping really bad. I have a new mounts down here, but I do have to replace the other ones, and the engine mounts. So the transmission mounts are already replaced, though one of them already seems to be tearing. The one I just replaced seems to be tearing, and that's only because I still have to replace the engine mounts, and the engine's moving all over the place. It's stressing out these transmission mounts. But yeah, so I gotta take this caliper off, right? I gotta take this caliper off, and I got these bars to, so I'm just gonna put it in between the pad and the rotor, or the rotor and the caliper, and I'm just going to peel it inwards a bit so that I can loosen this caliper up, so that when I unbolt it, which this is let me see, I believe that's either a 14 or a 12. It's a 14. So the caliper bolt is actually a 14 millimeter. So let me grab the 14 millimeter. So, clumsy. So these rotors are actually, they have supposed to go on a specific side here. This one's for the driver's side, and this is because these have to go directional of, direction of travel, basically. If you go like the other way, then it's probably gonna affect the brakes in some way if it goes the other way. So I got a 14 here that fits, and the rear, for the caliper, it is a 17. And so the 17 need more leverage because the bolt is bigger, so I got a bigger ratchet. So that's the front. This is how much pads I got in the front, and it's got pad life, but when you replace warped rotors, you have to replace the pads too, because there's going to be irregularities on how the brake rotor brakes, while you're driving, especially if it's vibrating like this. It's going to cause uneven wear on the pads. So and besides, these pads are also nicer too. They're better friction material. They're really grabby. And then this rotor here, what's going on with it is, since there's no pad material, this is just a metal plate. What's on, it's supposed to look like this. And what this is like ceramic. Well, most of them are ceramic. Some of them are metallic. Metallics are, they're good for dirt, like like durability, for them to last long, but they're not good for braking. That's why people usually use ceramics. But these are ceramic carbon, so apparently the carbon, it offers better grabbability, and maybe these will last longer than just ceramics. So yeah, it cut into the rotor. It's causing this sound while I drive. So I need to replace this rotor. And when you replace one side, you got to replace the other side because, I mean, it only makes sense. Besides, got the upgrades anyway. So, and these are the bolts that I'm talking about. So, these are pretty delicate. You got to be very delicate with them. So I'm using impact, not really the ideal thing to use, but it works for me. It always works for me. So, um, yeah. All right, so I'm gonna begin this process right now. All right, so I got the new brakes and the brake rotors and pads on. They look so clean, very, very nice. And I just have these old rotors here just to give you an idea of how bad it was. Like you could see the metal, it was rubbing on the rotor here, that way, like this, causing all this noise. It didn't do it on the other side though. But but these rotors are pretty warped. And then I got the front here. Now the front's weren't, the rotor is warped, and this pad here has a lot of cracks on it. It's just really old and that just tells you that this thing was heated a lot. So got that replaced. And now that's how they look like with the wheels on. Very, very nice. Very nice. Now I'm gonna, break them in uh, and test drive it, see how it feels. And yeah, other than that, that's the end of this one. Um, Basically, I just did a bit brake bleed. Put some new brake fluid in. Yeah, basically the next time I do an update, I'm gonna do the radiator, and that'll be pretty simple. Maybe the motor mounts too, but we'll see where that goes. Until next time.